All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing our 2025 preview and prediction for the UCF Knights. Scott Frost returns to his post as head coach. Wasn't very good at Nebraska, going 16-31 in 4+ seasons, but he did win the national championship in 2017 here in Orlando. Steve Cooper, offensive analyst at Boise State last year. Then Alex Grinch, he spent 2024 at Wisconsin, formerly a fired defensive coordinator from USC. Respectable offseason in terms of, hitting the portal. They brought in 41 at least new faces, and then high school ranks weren't all that impressive. 4-8 mark last year before Gus Malzahn took off for Florida State. And of course, I expected this team to compete for the conference championship, Nick, and again, 4 wins. They drastically underperformed, and now you start with their offense. And a big reason why is because this unit just was not that good. Now they returned 0 starters, so we're going to be starting from scratch. 17 guys they brought in via the portal. At the quarterback group, really unclear who they're going to go with under center. They picked up Taven Jackson from Indiana, solid dual-threat quarterback who got a few starts in 23 and was solid. He was also pretty good in relief last year, and he also got the start versus Washington. Nothing too flashy, but he has some solid skills when it comes to throwing and running the ball. Cam Francer comes over from FAU, started the career at Marshall, hasn't been all that good with a 27-23 TD to INT ratio. Pretty good runner, though, 1,500 career yards rushing. Davey Belfort, redshirt freshman who transfers in from Virginia Tech. He's an X3-star from the South Florida area. They also got Ja'Cory Brown on the roster. He's not a very good passer. Does legit damage as a runner, though, with good speed at 6'4", 220. I'll give Jackson the nod, but this is a legit 4-way battle for the quarterback spot, Nick. Who you're giving the nod to?
Yeah, this is certainly an intriguing battle on this position group. I'll probably give it to Jackson as well. I think Jackson makes the most sense, although I do think there is some potential that Brown takes the nod here because Brown is the incumbent, technically the only player returning. Last year he had 67 attempts for 1 touchdown and 4 picks, about 400 yards passing for Brown, so not very good numbers there, but he's a solid runner, right? 400 yards on the ground, 7.6 yards per attempt, and 4 scores for Ja'Cory Brown last year. So some production on the ground, depends what type of offense Scott Frost and company wants to run. You bring in Taven Jackson, who showed some promise in certain starts at Indiana, had 4 touchdowns and only 1 pick last year, 3 rushing touchdowns in his limited appearances. Maybe Taven Jackson get in 6'4", 212. He's got a huge frame there, certainly a big physical body. He was previously at Tennessee as well, though he did not play there. And then Cam Francher, he was okay at FAU and Marshall at time, had 6 touchdowns and 6 picks last year, 1,500 yards, did have the 3 rushing touchdowns. His 2023 was a much better campaign, 2,100 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 11 picks, and 4 rushing touchdowns. He's from Ohio, so interesting add there. He was at FAU previously, so that's why I'm assuming they brought him in, getting some film on him. I'm going to go with Brown right now. I think he's kind of the incumbent here, although I would not be surprised if Jackson gets the starting job. This is a completely new look offense with a whole bunch of different pieces around it, and I'm curious to see what type of offense they're going to want to run. Are they going to prefer a quarterback that's more of a pocket passer? Are they going to prefer a quarterback that's more agile on the ground, better at running the ball? They were solid at running the ball last year, 5th in the nation, and they were a very impressive number at that regard. So I wonder if they're going to try to run the ball again this year, considering they have some quarterbacks that have some legs, and they have a decent running back room we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah, of course it is a different system, though. When R.J. Harvey was an elite runner last year and he departs, they hit the portal in this one, too. Jaden Nixon was lackluster in his career at Oklahoma State, but he transferred to Western Michigan last year. He was great with 925 yards and 12 touchdowns. Most of that was early in the year, though. He was pretty horrid in the month of November before that. He had a stretch of 6 out of 7 games with 95-plus yards. Felt like Miles Montgomery would have a better year than he did last fall, but did battle some health, and that derailed his momentum mid-season. I think he's a good runner, though. Rest of the group, it features the next 3 stars, Stacey Gage, a 4-star, and Tavion Swint. So not the deepest backfield, but I think some really good upside. They're not going to be anywhere as good as they were last year, Nick, but obviously it's going to be a new staff, new identity, so they don't necessarily probably need to put up 250 yards rushing per game to be successful.
I don't think they have to, and I still think this is a solid running back room. I like what they have here. I think I have a little bit more, high upside potential here. I think feeling a little more bullish on this potential running back room here. I like what they have. Nixon last year, he was solid at Western Michigan, 919 on the ground, 6.4 yards per attempt, 12 scores. Had an okay rep at Oklahoma State prior to that, didn't really get a whole lot of touches there. Yes, he fell off in the second half of the season. You can certainly see that when you look at a game log where the final 3 games of the season he had no more than 7 touches and had 22 yards was his highest number. Did have a solid day against Northern Illinois, 95 yards and 2 scores in that one. Also had a decent day against Marshall, 146 and a score. So I think he's a back that's got some potential upside here. A solid add out of the portal. They returned Miles Montgomery, who I was pretty impressed with at times last year, 293, 5.7, and 3 scores for Montgomery here. I actually feel pretty good about this running back room. I think this is a solid unit that could really produce for this offense.
They move to the wide receiver group. They're headlined by 5 transfers himself. Chris Domerkant coming off a good 640-yard campaign for Chattanooga. DJ Black comes over from Limestone with nearly 1K yards and 11 touchdowns. DeJuan Thomas, he arrives from Charlotte. He was quiet for 2 years. Marcus Burke, 4 years of less than 100 yards each from Florida. The rest of the group is a pretty young group. They have a transfer in Darius Farmer from West Virginia. You have plenty of redshirt freshmen and true freshmen behind the transfer, so the group is pretty as weak as it could get, Nick. No returning production. Not much proven stats either. The ones you do have are from FCS schools. Dylan Wade's a solid tight end, though, from Maryland. He had a pretty good year, almost 400 yards. For the most part, though, this is just screaming it's not going to be very good. I don't know a better way to put it. I mean, the young guys you have, Nick, again, they've never played, and the guys that arrive that are proven come from a much lower level, so this is going to be abysmal.
Yeah, this is a bad unit, right? There's no sugarcoating here. This is a unit full of transfers here that are weak and a lot to prove. I think if this offense is going to have any success, it's going to be on the ground this year. I think Dormicant is not a bad ad from Chattanooga. He was solid for them last year. But again, FCS level, so you're pulling a guy from that level. Same thing with DJ Black coming over from Limestone. Again, another guy jumping up from the FCS level, although he had success for them potentially in the slot. You can move him around. DeWayne Thomas didn't do really anything at Charlotte. He had, had a pretty tough career there. Had 1 touchdown last year on 6 grabs. He's a guy they think could potentially be okay. They bring in Marcus Burke from Florida, who didn't do anything in his career there. He did have 2 touchdowns, though, on his few grabs, so maybe there's a red zone threat potentially there. Farmer comes over from West Virginia. He didn't do a whole lot there either, although at 6 foot 170, there might be some solid speed for the younger guy. And then Dylan Wade, the tight end from Maryland, I think is actually not bad at 375 and 2 scores last year. Maybe he could be a red zone threat as well. This pass catcher group is weak, right? There's no way to sugarcoat it here. It's a weak unit full of transfers and guys that got a lot to prove. Some high upside potential here, but that's all it is just potential right now. Curious to see if they can even develop in any sort of fashion.
Now you look at the offensive line for UCF. Paul Roublet, he was exceptional in his first full year as a starter over at right tackle. They're going to be moving him over the left set tackle most likely. 6'10", 330. This guy's got abundance of size. Owen Spell from Limestone to compete with him. Keegan Smith will battle with Washington transfer guard Mermeller, who was a quality starter, but had some really poor outings versus the tougher defensive lines. Added 300-pound center Carter Miller, who started at left guard for James Madison back in 2023. Then was a stout pass blocker in 2024 for ULM. Right guard's going to return Jabari Brooks. Only played a couple of snaps at 6'3", 335 last year. Had 4 great seasons at Stanford before that, though. He can play anywhere on the interior offensive line, so he's going to be a real standout there. Right tackle, nice little battle here as well. Preston Cushman spent 3 years at Ole Miss. Was quiet, though. Didn't see the field much. Connor Meadows was below-average starter for Tennessee State last year, but did start his career at Tennessee, so obviously he's got some talent to his name. Justin Royes from Virginia Union, also in the fold. Cameron Kinney was solid in nearly 200 snaps on the interior offensive line last fall. I don't think this is a bad group here, Nick. I think they have some size, some solid experience. I know there's going to be a lot of mismatching to get things started. What's kind of your thoughts on this? It's an interesting group, again, that has a significant amount of size. Paul Roublet is a monster over there at left tackle. He's going to be a standout.
Yeah, I love Paul Roublet. I think he's a phenomenal player, probably the best player on this offense, full stop. He was so good at right tackle last year. Curious to see how he transitioned to left tackle, though I expect him to have a lot of success there. I like 2 of the other returning guys, Kinney and Brooks. I think those were 2 solid assets for this team. I think they'll be okay here. They went out to the portal, added some interesting pieces. Meadows is certainly an interesting piece at right tackle, potentially. Carter Miller at center, I think, could be a solid veteran that had some good experience at previous stops as well. This O-line's not a terrible unit, I think the running back room is the best part of this offense, but I don't think the O-line is that far behind it. I like the pieces they have, and they can certainly start to build something.
The size isn't a typo either, Nick. Roublet really is 6'10", 330. That's ridiculous. I don't know how he moves his legs like that. Maybe basketball will be in his future. What do you think of that?
Yeah, he's just massive. What an absolute freak of nature. And at that size is absolutely insane. He's a really interesting player to watch. If you're going to tune into this UCF team at all next year, please just watch what he can do on the field. The footwork is quite impressive for a big man.
Now you look at the offensive verdict here. It's a complete revamp for UCF on offense after a massive disappointment on this side of the ball. We got transfers galore, most of them being below average and unproven. Again, the offensive line is probably the biggest strength, to be honest. And you have a 4-way QB battle that's less than ideal, especially since I question Frost's coaching ability. Not much of a ceiling here, but used as a building block year. And I've always kind of considered Frost to be overrated, Nick. I know back when they won the national championship, the offense was tremendous at UCF, but he just doesn't have much of a track record after that. And before that, I felt like he was just a beneficiary of great Chip Kelly offenses at Oregon. So I'm just not sure if he's really that great. But again, the year back in 2017, they did average almost 50 points per game. So got to give credit where it's due.
Yeah, you got to get credit for it due. And this offense was quite interesting last year. I mean, when you look at what they were able to do, despite the 4 wins, they still had 447 yards per game, 14th in the nation, 248 in the ground, 5th in the nation. A lot of that was on R.J. Harvey, who is no longer here. I'm not really high on Scott Frost as a coach in general. Obviously, what happened at Nebraska is still looming large in my mind. He was most recently an analyst with the Rams here. They kind of running it back with him back at UCF. I don't know if exactly the best idea, but he's hoping to get more of this offense. I don't think this offense will be very good this year. The quarterback room is a battle of a bunch of guys who I don't think are very good. The wide receiver room is a massive red flag. I like what the running backs can do. I think they'll be pretty strong, and I do think the O-line is sneaky good as well. So this team, if they're going to have success, they're going to have to just run the ball a lot and let the passing game transition in the future here. I just don't expect a whole lot of passing output from Scott Frost's first offense back in Central Florida.
Now you move to the defensive side of the ball. This is actually a quality unit for the Knights, but again, they're really going to be starting from scratch. Getting only 2 starters back. Both of them were on the defensive line, so we went to the portal, added about 18, 20 guys. Najee Kelly, defensive end. This guy was elite. Came over from Miami. Always thought he'd be a breakout star for the Canes. Never quite happened. All he had to do was transfer to Orlando, and he was great. Led the team in sacks and tackles for loss. Was great versus the run. Overall, a great disruptor. I think they're incredibly blessed to have him return for this new regime. Malachi Lawrence was right behind him with 5 sacks. Only had 15 tackles. Wasn't as good versus a run. This is a key duo here, though. The defensive end depth features a Pitt transfer in Sincere Edwards. He was a really good run defender for them. Isaiah Nixon was solid in his 200 snaps last year. Americ Kumba didn't play for Michigan last year. Then you have Jamal Johnson, who has 200 snaps across 3 years. The interior defensive line, Horace Lockett, 6'6", 315. He missed last season, but was a good run stopper for Georgia Tech back in 2023. R.J. Jackson the last 2 years at Tulsa was below average. Rodney Laura, only a few snaps in his 2 years. They have Jefferson LaFontaine, who was a pretty good rotational run defender in 2 years at Bethune-Cookman. So I think the defensive end group is actually pretty good, Nick. The interior, maybe not as much. I don't think it's the worst group in the world. I'm kind of happy with what they have here, though. And if they didn't have those 2 guys coming back, in Kelly and Lawrence, they would certainly be in peril. I'm happy with that part of the defense, though.
Yeah, I actually really like this defensive line. I think this is a really strong unit. It's going to get some praise from me and get some positivity. I actually really love what this unit can do. I think, Kelly's a phenomenal player there. 53 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, a pass breakup. Najee Kelly is a phenomenal player. I think it's really good to get him back. Malachi Lawrence was good for this team as well. 15 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and a pass breakup. Not bad. Isaiah Nixon, 11 total tackles, and a sack for him. He has some potential left in there as well. I think this is a very strong defensive line with some nice transfers as well. You bring in Edwards from Pitt, who had some success last year, 17 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 4 QB hurries for the young man who was playing at Pitt last year. He could be really solid. Horace Lockett didn't play last year, but played the year before that, had 2.5 tackles for loss. He's a big body at 6'6". 315. He'll be solid in the interior. R.J. Jackson was an okay ad from Tulsa. Didn't do a whole lot. Did have 4 tackles for loss and 3 sacks last year, though. And then Rodney Laura and Jefferson LaFont are some lower-end talent they bring in as well. High upside pass rush group. I like what they can do. I think if there's any part of this defense that's going to be good, they'll be solid against the run. They'll be solid at putting pressure on the quarterback.
Now we move to the middle of this defense. Lewis Carter, he was good in the rotation for Oklahoma, but only about 120 snaps. Keely Lawson saw good action in 3 years at Virginia Tech, but he was more poor in coverage, though. Improved versus the run, but still not exactly a strong suit. Jaden McDonald only saw 1 game last year for Virginia Tech, but back in 2023, he was quite good in his extensive action for them. Cole Kozlowski was a really good starter over the last 2 seasons for Colgate, and they returned Cam Moore, who didn't get on the field last year. Again, I don't think this is the worst group in the world either. I think it's a solid collection of transfers here, Nick. I know you're not the biggest fan of building complete rooms out of transfers. This new regime kind of has no choice, though. They have 5 guys and then 1 guy in Cam Moore who's returning. I think they have some nice veteran presence here, and I think it'll be a respectable group.
Yeah, I've never loved building your whole unit out of the portal here. They added some interesting pieces. I'm still not super high on this linebacking core. I think some of these guys do have some nice potential upside by themselves. Lewis Carter, 23 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss at Oklahoma. He's got some high-end, high-level FBS football in his skin. Keely Lawson comes over from Virginia Tech, where he had some success. He had 80 tackles in 2023, as well as 7 tackles for loss, 4 QB hurries. Solid dip production last year, 40 total tackles for him. He's hoping to get back to that 2023 form, as are most of the fans at UCF here. Jay McDonald also comes over from Virginia Tech. He didn't play last year, but he was okay in 2023. A total 30 total tackles. And then Kozlowski comes over from Colgate. Interesting ad. Curious to see what he looks like. Don't think the size is terrible on him. Maybe this linebacker group can certainly progress throughout the season. I'm keeping an eye on some of the potential development here. I don't know if I trust the coaching necessarily, but some of the pieces they add from the portal weren't horrible.
Now you look at the secondary. Jakari Henderson leads the way. Didn't play very well in his 100 snaps. He'll be sliding into a starting role most likely, though. Anthony Jackson saw 100 more reps, but wasn't any better. So they go to the portal, add some corners. Jaden Bellamy was a phenomenal addition. He was great as a 2-year starter for Syracuse. Isaiah Reed, he saw extensive action in 3 years at Brown. He was also really good in coverage. DJ Bell was solid for Memphis in 500-plus snaps across 2 years. So some nice veterans they were able to go snag. The slot's likely to be occupied by Braden Marshall, who saw nearly 300 snaps last year for the Knights. Wasn't that good in coverage, but he was quality across the board, I thought. Jair Brown spent time at LSU and Ohio State, comes to the table. Safety group's going to get back Damari Richardson, who missed last season of an injury, but he was a really good starter in 2023 versus the run. Also provided stability in coverage. Philip Dunham, he was elite in coverage for FAU last season. He was poor versus the run, though, while his co-part Jaden Williams was pretty strong in coverage. So some nice chemistry coming to Orlando via Boca Raton. Jaden Gold didn't play that much for the Qs this past season. Not a bad secondary. I think they got some good players. That seems to be kind of a common theme here, Nick, is where I think they did a lot better on this side of the ball compared to the offense and the portal additions. I think the safety group's going to be a real, interesting point for them. I don't know how the corner group will do, especially with limited depth, but I'm keying in on those safeties.
Yeah, not a bad little portal class here. They bring in Marshall, 22 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a pick, and 3 pass breakups. He returns, I beg your pardon, from last year. He was okay for this team, as was Jakari Henderson, 13 total tackles, and a tackle for loss for him. They both come back. The portal class, though, I think there's some solid players here. Bellamy comes over from Syracuse. I was disappointed to see him leave the Qs. I thought he was really solid for them. 37 total tackles, 6 pass breakups, 2 picks last year. He was not a bad add for that program. Isaiah Reed was pretty solid at Brown. He is a Tampa, Florida native, so they bring him back into the state of Florida. Dunham was not a bad add from FAU as well. 4 pass breakups and 3 picks this past season. Also had 3 picks and 6 pass breaks the year before that. 50-plus tackles in the past 2 years for the safety. He was solid at FAU. DJ Bell was not bad at Memphis. 5 pass breakups and a pick for him last year. 16 total tackles. He's not a bad player. You could potentially move him around as well. Jaden Williams come over from FAU. He had a pass breakup, 26 total tackles, 2 picks. Not terrible from his production standpoint as well. And then Jaden Gould comes over as well. He was an interesting add from Syracuse. He didn't really do anything for them last year, but again, a lot of guys they added from the same school. They added multiple pairs of players from the same school, FAU and Syracuse, so there's some chemistry built in with those guys. The secondary struggled at points last year, but it also had some strong games. They weren't that disappointing. Curious to see what they look like under the new regime here. I think some of the portal adds were decent. Overall, this is a unit that could certainly develop throughout the season.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give them a B-. I think the Knights' defense was strong versus the run last year, and they returned 2 good defensive end. Failed out the defensive line with some nice size and depth. Not all that opposed to the linebacking and secondary groups, so they have some quality transfers. But the issue here, Nick, Alex Grinch will be the defensive coordinator, meaning in terms of scheming, they could struggle immensely. This guy has no idea what he is doing, and now he's going to try and put a bunch of, average or above average transfers together to keep a defense that was actually pretty respectable last year, progressing. It's not probably going to happen due to him being in the fold.
For those who are confused, Dalton's a big USC fan. He does not like Alex Grinch, and I can't blame him. He was absolutely horrendous coaching that defense in the past. The fact that he's getting jobs at high-level football still is shocking to me in the year 2025. I don't think he's a very good coordinator at all. He was not able to do anything with a plethora of talent out west, and now he has less talent to work with in Central Florida. I don't think it's going to work out very well. I think this defense will regress from where they were last year. I think there are some potential nice pieces here. I like Kelly a lot. I think Kelly's phenomenal on the defensive line. I think some of the pieces they add at linebacker are not bad. I think the secondary will be a decent unit here. I love the pass rush. I love the run defense capabilities as well here. But I don't think the coaching is very good, and I think some of those miscommunications at linebacker could present themselves with a brand new unit as well. So I'm keeping an eye on this team in the Big 12 here, but I have a feeling they may get blown out by some of the tougher opponents on their schedule, and coaching will be a little bit clueless here. Again, this is a wait-and-see approach from me with UCF. I like some of the ads. I love the pass rush, but I still have a ton of question marks for this defense.
I move to the schedule and the prediction for UCF. This is a team that burned me last year. I picked them to win, hit the over win total. Picked them to make the conference championship game. They came nowhere near close to that, Nick, as KJ Jefferson, after a couple good games, just fell off a cliff. Malzahn departs for greener pastures, it appears. And it's hard to expect this team to really bounce back after that as they go to the portal heavily. They bring back Scott Frost, who, again, I just don't think is that great of a coach, and he's a good guy, and I hate to be as disrespectful as I'm being. I just don't think he's that good of a coach, Nick. And, what this commentary about Nebraska and why they failed was kind of ridiculous as well, trying to say, well, I was kind of forced into this job, and that's why he didn't perform. And it's just like, I'm not going to buy that. And then you have the guy coaching the defense who has no idea what he's doing, who on 3rd and 3 against the best passing attack in the country plays corners 10 yards off. So it's like, I don't know what we're going to do here, Nick. The offensive coordinator edition as well is a young guy who was just in an analyst role for Boise State last year. This coaching staff, I just don't think it's very good, and maybe they'll prove us wrong. In the books, have the win total at 5.5. I don't know where they're going to do that, Nick. Maybe they can be competitive in this conference. I just think they're going to be flat out abysmal every which way you look. You have an insane quarterback battle with 4 different guys, and we have no idea who's going to get the nod there. I just don't think this is going to be very pretty. I don't think this experiment will last very long, and then I know UCF will be back to the chopping block trying to reach out for more realistic coaching candidates than they had a couple months ago.
Yeah, my stock is extremely low on UCF right now, and I hate to say that because this is a fun program that's got, a really solid short-term history considering they were really not a big-level program in the past. They kind of built themselves up very quickly. They had those great seasons, and now they kind of find themselves down the dumps a little bit here. I'm out on this team. This team I don't think is going to be very good at all. The offense I have so many question marks about. I do like some of the running backs, and I do think the offensive line is a solid unit. The defense I have some question marks as well, even if I do love the pass rush and the capabilities there from that part of the team. I don't like any of the coaching hires at all there. I think Scott Frost was a terrible hire. I think you're just kind of chasing a previous high that you're never going to get again. Frost showed at Nebraska that he is just incompetent as a coach, in my opinion. I think he benefited from previous situations like you alluded to, and that 13-0 season was kind of a fluke in 2017. So I think this was the wrong hire. It felt like they were just kind of desperate and gambling, and they knew Frost wouldn't say no after what he was sitting, basically was an analyst for the Rams, not doing anything really. So he was never going to say no when they offered him the job because Malzahn kind of bolted and put them in a tough position, although I don't think Gus was doing a whole lot positive with this team. I don't think Grinch is a good coordinator at all. I'm not sure about that hire, and then bringing in an analyst from Boise State to be your offensive play caller is kind of concerning as well. The schedule, I don't think they're going to win a lot of games. I'm at 3-9 as well. Maybe they find a way to pick off Houston, West Virginia at home, BYU. I don't know. I'm reaching here. I just don't think they're going to anywhere near that over-under win total here. I just don't think this is a very good team. I think they're going to struggle on both sides of the ball mightily this year. I don't think Frost's going to last. I think he's going to last 3 years, and they're going to have to cut him loose because it's just not working out. I think it was a bad hire. I give it like a D hire from the jump here. I just don't really understand it overall. A tough season in Orlando here. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I just don't think it's going to work out. Curious to see what happens. I'll keep an eye on it, but I don't have any faith in this project at all. I'm very low on UCF right now.
Yeah, I do kind of want to zero in on that again. I think that Frost is just a guy who benefited from one good season, and that's what kind of, is the standout on his resume. And it's in a very impressive mark, 13-0. You won the Peach Bowl over Auburn, and you went around saying you were the national champions and whatnot. But again, his coaching track record, other than that, is just not impressive. It was horrible at Nebraska, at Oregon. Chip Kelly was the innovator there, and I think he really benefited from that. And he brought some of the expertise over in 2017 and implemented it in a bit of a weaker conference, of course. So I think it's a little bit overblown, like you said, maybe a bit of a fluke season there. But this is a team in 2017, the last 2 games of the year against ranked opponents, they won 49-42, 62-55. And we're beating teams by shootouts, Nick, and that's what gives us a 13-0 mark. And then the game against Auburn was a bit of a shootout as well, where we kind of got lucky in the second half of that one. So it's a big blemish. I don't think I'm going to take anything away from the 2017 team, but looking at the overall track record, it's just not impressive.
No, it's not impressive overall, and I feel like, again, you're chasing something that was really successful at one point, but it was kind of a weird situation. I just don't like the move at all. I mean, Frost was completely incompetent at Nebraska. There's no other way to put it. Those teams were brutal. That 3-9 team in 2021 just was losing so many close games. He made so many big mistakes, and I always think about back to the game in 2022 in his final season at Nebraska where he went for that onside kick in Dublin when they had all the momentum, and it ended up costing them against Northwestern. That still makes no sense to me even a couple years later. And when that happened, you and I were blowing up each other's phones saying, like, what are you doing? This makes no sense. And that ended up costing him and cost him his job a couple weeks later. So I don't think he's a good coach at all. I think they were in a tough situation, so I don't envy the people running the show at UCF because they had to make a decision and hire somebody. So they went out and got Frost, something that they think could excite the fan base here. But I think this is going to sink faster than Titanic. I don't like this at all, and I'm really not high on UCF. I hate to trash the team, but I just don't think this looks positive.
I totally forgot about that moment in Dublin. I now remember it. And, of course, a couple weeks later, they lost to Georgia Southern at home in front of almost 90,000. So, to me, for today's episode, a bit of a harsh one. I just don't think this team will be very good. That's our honest opinion. We'd love to be wrong, though, Nick. I mean, this team's, not too far away from me. I'd love to go to the bounce house for some meaningful football games. I just don't think they're going to happen anytime soon.
Certainly prove us wrong if it can. We'll see what happens.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.